Welcome to the What's Up Verdict podcast. We fashion ourselves cinematic judge and jury. My name is JJ Crowder. I'm here with my co-hosts Mattson,
better read than dead,
and Alec Burgess.
Let's get it.
We appreciate you tuning in. Go ahead, hit that follow, subscribe, like, bell notification buttons. Help you keep up with all the episodes we have coming out and get announcements and all that fun stuff. And then it helps to grow the podcast. So we appreciate that. You know what else helps grow the podcast? Tell your family, your friends about us. Tell, I'm going to say, a war historian, maybe a Civil War historian this time. I can't really tell anybody directly involved. So go ahead and, tell a historian about us. We'll take that.
There's plenty of ghosts of Confederate soldier stories flying around.
There you go. Yeah, you can find it. But then, Alec, that means they're telling a ghost. And
yeah, well, you know.
Sacrifices must be made, right?
I'm brave now, JJ. We've done a horror month. I'm brave.
That's right. If you can't tell, we're kicking over into the month of May. It's time for a new category. We are kicking off war movies. We've done a few in the last little while, some other topics, but this one's just straight war movies. And I know Alec and I both picked some challenging movies. So we'll see how this goes. But to kick us off, we're starting it off right with Gettysburg. It was released October 8th, 1993. It was written by Michael Shaara and Ron Maxwell. It's directed by Ron Maxwell. Stars, look, I'm going to give a list of names, but this movie's insane with the amount of cast and what's in it. But I'll go through a handful of names here. So we got Tom Berenger, Martin Sheen, Stephen Lang, Richard Jordan, Andrew Prine, Cooper Huckabee, Patrick Gorman, Bo Brinkman, Jeff Daniels. I almost said the wrong Jeff there. James Patrick Stewart, and Kieran Mulroney. It is 1863, and the Northern and Southern forces fight at Gettysburg in the decisive Battle of the American Civil War. I mean, if we're going to kick it off, we might as well kick it off right with all 4.5 hours of Gettysburg. So, Alec, I believe this was your choice.
This was, and I originally picked it 110% to be a dick and make you guys sit through a 4.5 hour movie. But while watching it, I was like, fuck yes, I love this movie. Like, I forget because it's a 4.5 hour movie. That's enough of a, like, hey, you know what? Maybe not.
But I think always.
Oh, no. This movie's fantastic. And so I watched it and I didn't even feel like it was 4.5 hours. It felt a lot less of a time. And it's got me so, like, you know, up and at 'em that Oshi and I are actually going to go to Gettysburg in a couple of weeks.
Nice.
So, yeah, a couple of weeks from when this episode releases, we'll have gone to Gettysburg.
Wow. Well, if nothing else, it was worth it for you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I've been to Gettysburg before. I grew up on the East Coast for a little bit, so I went there as I was a kid. But I haven't been in like 10 years. And so I was watching this and I was like remembering, you know, because they have a wonderful guided tour when you go there. And I was remembering all the stories that happened, and we get into some of the fighting. And I'm like, dude, I texted Oshi because she wants to go to Salem and see witchcraft stuff.
Sure.
I was like, I will go to Salem if you go to Gettysburg. And so, yeah, this movie did exactly what it was supposed to do. I fell right into the Gettysburg trap. And it was all started 100% to be a dick. So there's my comeuppance that I got.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. I love this movie.
Nice.
All about it.
Well, I'll stick it right back to you and say I love all 4.5 hours of this movie. I was if you hadn't put it on the list, I would have put it on the list, and not to be a dick, but because this is a great movie about a very crazy time in our history, and it's very well done, and it's based off of a book that's like extremely good. In fact, it's based off of one of a trilogy of books that is outstanding. The one that this one's based off is Killer Angels, and the other one is
I wondered if it was big. I love Killer Angels.
Yeah,
Angels. One of the only books in school I read that I actually truly liked. It was awesome.
Have you read the other two?
I haven't. I didn't know there was other two. I should read them now.
Gods and Generals and The Full Measure. Gods and Generals, the first one, Killer Angels is the second, and then The Full Measure is the last, and they're all equally fantastic. Great points of view. Gods and Generals starts before the Civil War, so you kind of get General Lee and a couple of other these generals that you see, and even some of the colonels and stuff like that through this movie. You get to see their start going through West Point and learn the differences as to why the Northern generals were considered the smarter generals, but got their asses handed to them for 2.5 years. And then, why General Lee was so good, and like, all the different ones that we see here at the end that they talk about that are just amazing. So interesting book. And then The Full Measure is kind of like the wrap up, and you should read them if you haven't. Very good books. But yeah, I love this movie. I saw it in high school. They made us watch, I think, my freshman year. And I was like, oh, fuck. And it took like 3 weeks. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is a long-ass movie. But yeah, it's really good. And I watched it. I think if you guys watched it through Amazon, this was like I watched the extended version, which is
20 extra minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's
almost 5
hours.
That means I did too. Ugh.
Yeah, it's almost 5 hours, I think.
Gosh.
So it's very long, but very good. Matt said, I'm sure we know what you're going to say, but
I mean, yeah, I think you know what I'm going to say. Yes and no. Like, is this movie long? Like, yes, JJ said this movie's long multiple times. This movie's very long. Like, I don't know what people did when this movie came out in theaters. Like, it would have been a lot. Like, they needed multiple intermissions. Like, people don't have time for this in a movie theater. Like, this day and age, like, you got to allocate like almost 6 hours. Like, that's a long time. That being said, this podcast should know I'm a sucker for like war movies, and I'm a sucker for history. So like, this movie seemed extremely historically accurate, and I absolutely appreciated that. And I think I read Killer Angels. I've read a lot about Gettysburg, and like seeing it come to life, and the sheer amount of people that they put in this movie. I mean, the battle on, I should remember the hill that they had to hold on the flank.
Little Round Top.
Top.
I mean, I read about it, knew about it, but like to see it and what their interpretation of it looked like incredible. Was the acting like, did it feel like I was in Gettysburg and like a part of the crew? Yeah, so it was visually pleasing, well acted, interesting subject matter. But yeah, it was long. So I have mixed feelings. It's not like I didn't enjoy watching it. It was just when you got kids and you got stuff to do, like I just can't sit and watch this movie in one sitting. So it felt like it took a long time to get through, but it wasn't bad. Like, I was entertained. There were parts with the monologue and how they speak back then and things. You're just like, okay, like maybe we could just get through that a little bit. But at the same time, that's just kind of how things were back then. But I can appreciate it. Like it was a well done movie. They truly felt like, for me, kind of left no stone unturned with what they were trying to tell. And I think that's hard to do. Granted, they took a large amount of time to get that done. So that's the trade-off.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, I think what I like most about this movie, besides the movie, like actual visuals and all that fun and what it's about, but like, I like it because we do talk a lot about movies that we've watched that are based in historical fact, whether it's, football movies or war movies or any kind of movie that had like, this is based on a true story. Like, the thing that I respect about Michael Shaara and the fact that they didn't let it be short is the fact that the books, Killer Angels, those 3 books are all based on Michael Shaara's research and reading of the journals of all these guys. Like, he went through and read historical records and journals. And so a lot of the dialogue he took from journals and then put into this movie as back and forth, or those monologues, like General Lee sitting in that tent where he kind of is just talking about, well, he's got like 8 of them, but any one of his dialogue, like those monologues that he does, most of them come at least rooted from things that he wrote in his journal that he was feeling during that time. And then they turn it into dialogue to kind of express like how he was feeling. And that was true for a lot of the major players that we see in this movie. And like, it's really interesting to me to think about, one, the differences in people from back then and now, because like, and they show it very well in the war. And I think that's what stands out to me the most is like, you're fighting this war, right? Like people, you're killing each other. Like it's brutal. It's crazy. But when there gets to a point when you realize, look, we've got this in the bag. Like we've won. They start helping each other and, you know, picking each other up. And it's not like they just start. And I think it's in stark contrast to the movies that we're doing later in this month, because you see that we move into some very brutal wars where there isn't that consideration of the fact that these are human beings. And obviously there's a little difference because half these guys knew each other from schools, or, you know, it wasn't as a populated country back then as we are now. But it's, you know, it's just one of those things where that to me stands out huge. Like the fact that they went over, and at the end it's huge. Like it's a really big thing with the one general, Hancock, I think, where he's sitting there, and maybe it wasn't Hancock, it was the other guy that Hancock knew, from Armistead. As he's laying there and he's telling these soldiers they're trying to take care of this guy. And like that, to me, like that's wild. You know what I mean? Comparatively to how today, like I don't think you'd see that same kind of consideration, at least in general, right? Where that was the norm. Like it was, hey, look, these are our people too. We're just in a huge battle.
I think you said it best, right? Because many of these guys, the generals especially, they fought with each other. They were captains when they were younger, and they were literally doing this again. The only comparison I can come to that is like the Revolutionary War, when many, like George Washington, some of those people fought with the British captains and generals in the French and Indian War, like earlier than that, and they knew each other and things. But you're right, like obviously I've never been in a war, but the camaraderie that you build in those moments doesn't really go away, clearly. And I think they show that quite well in this film. And when you're fighting your brother that just happens to live, I don't know, 100 miles from where you lived, and there's a wee bit of different ideologies, but then you remember that they're still your friend. That's probably got to be hard to come to terms with at times, when they're fighting because of something that people say they should fight for, but do they really care about that thing being slavery as much as a few people do? It's hard to say.
Yeah.
But I think that was I like that they dove into that aspect, because this movie definitely needed, I mean, there's clearly the emotion of the battles and things, but it needed emotional character progression, or I don't think you literally could have carried anyone for 4.5 hours. And I thought they did that pretty well with a few different stories.
Yeah. Well, and I love the Chamberlain brothers story too. Like that's just so, and I love that they made that like front and center. And if you don't know the history of like, I'm assuming, Alec, you said you've been and you're getting ready to go. I'm assuming, Mattson, you've been. I mean, you live very close. I mean, it's
only been once, and it's been a while ago, but I've been to Manassas battlefield, like some of the other major battles, very often. And so like the vibe, I mean, it looks pretty similar to Gettysburg in a lot of senses.
Yeah. Did you ever find yourself during this movie getting all like jacked up when they're screaming Virginia and shit? Like yeah, Virginia.
No. When I think of Virginia, I think of traffic and humidity, so I don't get too dang passionate about it. But no, that's funny. I forgot that it's been a couple of weeks since I'd seen it. I was like, oh yeah, I should have been like, let's go.
Yeah, Virginia. No,
except Virginia was on the wrong side of the battle, so that's probably where I was like, yeah.
And they were absolutely on. No, because that's where was it Richmond that was the Confederate capital? Yeah. Yeah, I don't like. It's been a while since we've been there. Like I went there as a kid because I grew up close to there in Ohio, like Eastern Ohio. Like we were very close to Gettysburg and been there a couple of times when I was younger. And I didn't understand or respect like the scope of that place when I was there as a kid. Not what was it back in, I think 2015 ish. Casey's parents drove down from Utah to see us and hang out, and spend some time. And we loaded up in a van and we drove up and went to Gettysburg with them. And And as an adult, I had a much bigger appreciation and understanding of like what that place was. And it's pretty awe-inspiring as an adult to like stand there and still see. And they've done a really good job of keeping that field and Little and Big Round Tops, like both historically what it was during that time. And it's wild. Like that final charge that Lee was just gung-ho, was they were going to break the center, and like you see like that tree line, you're like, fuck, there's no way. Like, how did you know what I mean? And it's wild to think about like the success that Robert E. Lee had, and then in that one moment, like the overconfidence of being stuck by this comedy of errors, from different generals doing dumb shit or not doing what they should have been doing, and then making poor choices of not pushing the advance in that first battle of Gettysburg. So it's just wild that he's just like, no, we've got the numbers and we can do this, and makes that one mistake that really just loses them the war. So it's really wild to me. Like, but yeah, I found it very humbling to stand there and like especially after reading all the books and everything else. And it's just like, wow, okay, this is a linchpin of our country's history right here. One of them anyway. And so it's pretty wild to be there. So I'm excited for you, Alec, to get to go and like be there as an adult and kind of hang out. And it's cool. The tours are bitching. Like it's wild. Wild.
Yeah, I am stoked. Something that I really liked about this movie as well is I think they did a good job with the Rebel Yell.
Mm-hmm.
That keeping that kind of going, like because I remember when one of the last trips I went to Louisville, Gettysburg. We took the guided tour, and he was talking specifically about the Rebel Yell. Yeah. And they have like a speaker where they play it over, and they're kind of like, have you close your eyes and kind of they give you a visual picture, and you have this thing going. The way they built this out, that thing's fucking blood chilling.
Yeah.
And to have, beyond the flank, right? Let's put you in Chamberlain shoes on the flank, and you got smoke going everywhere. There's no ammo. You're running low on everything. Half your dudes are dead, and you're hearing nothing but that coming out of the smoke.
Mm-hmm.
I'm packing it in, dude. See you later.
Yeah, and to still make that choice to like,
to charge down the hill.
Yeah,
like
it's wild.
No way. And so I like that they put these key points in, and they make for a great movie. But there's also the history to back behind it, and they don't take too much exposition to explain what's going on. They just let it ride, and it fits so well.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
It's crazy. Yeah, I remember this. So I was never like a big history guy when I was a kid, but I will say that in high school, when they made me watch this movie, I was not excited. And I was living in Kentucky at the time. So I was in a neutral state for the war, but very much in the South, you know what I mean? And like Kentucky may have been neutral during the war, but when I was a kid, it wasn't quite as neutral as it used to be. You know what I mean? Like they were sure quick a lot of times to claim that Confederate legacy and, what would have happened and whatnot. And that's a whole different topic that I could go through and talk about. But I remember not being like real thrilled about the fact that we were going to watch this, because I was like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. But then this movie really kind of turned me on to history and like the fact that the Civil War is a very interesting war, and there's a lot more to it than what most people. What was the Civil War about? Well, it was about slavery. Sure, it absolutely was, but that's far from the only thing that this war was about. Yeah, like that's the swing in what was used to to start it and to continue it on, and it ended it, which was wonderful, and it should have happened. But at the same time, like I didn't know. Like I always thought as a kid that that's all it was about. And then you get to learning the history, and it's not at all that it was about. But like that's when I started reading the books, and I read Killer Angels when I was 16, and I was like, this is great. It was a very hard book to get through when I was 16, but it was really crazy. And then I read the whole trilogy, and I've read the whole trilogy a couple times now. And I hadn't watched this movie in years because it's so long, but I was glad that we did, because like I was reminded of like I love the performance of Martin Sheen and him being so soft-spoken as General Lee, which, you know, it's known that General Lee was very soft-spoken and patient and calm, but like normally Martin Sheen's kind of got this like very loud carrying voice that he uses, and he just quiets himself down. And then, you know, all the supporting characters, like not a big Tom Berenger fan, but he kills it in this. And then, yeah, like just so many things. What's his face is Pickett. Like I love like the smile that he gives when he's like, can you take this, you know, can you take that ridge? And he just smiles and goes nuts. Like, yeah, Stephen Lang or whatever. Yeah, it's just so many phenomenal actors, like names that you read through and you go, holy shit, all these people are in this movie. And you can tell, like, especially in those generals and the leaders. And I think honestly at the time the most unknown dude was Jeff freaking Daniels, which is wild to think about now. But yeah, really, really good casting, I think, was the other. This couldn't have been a cheap movie at the time to make, though from a set piece standpoint, probably very cheap, because I know that they did a lot of the filming there in Gettysburg. So it was probably a lot cheaper to do it there than, you know, in a studio and having to build the sets and things like that. But from a casting standpoint, they probably, and I don't know, maybe these actors were like, well, yeah, we'll do this, but because it's a commitment. But there's also a lot of good Civil War movies, and I think this one's the best. And I love Glory, don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's phenomenal, but I think this one's the best of them. But yeah.
So I will say something that I hate.
Uh-oh.
And it's something that I shouldn't hate because I know it's the way it is.
Sure.
It's the little bit of the extras, right? Because you have a lot of the extras are Civil War reenactors, and they're just having fun out there in that Pennsylvania June heat. And so, like, it's the little bit at the beginning where you have the villagers, right? And they're doing like telling the soldiers, like, where have you been, right? Cattle raids have been happening. And I'm just sitting there going, oh my God.
Yeah.
But that's it, right? That's the character. You go to any kind of place on the East Coast, historical site, and that's everybody. And they do not break character. It does not matter what is going on. Whole place could be burning down, and they'll still be in character. And then it's funny as well because like when they do the charge off a little round top, you got the Union officer in front with the sword. He's just like dancing around.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I get it, right? What he's doing. He's looking back to make sure his guys are still following them. But the way he's like jumping around, pirouetting down the hill, I'm like, oh, dude, he's having way too much fun.
It's true. I love how dramatic some of them are too when they get shot. Like the one guy that like jumps. It's like, yeah, you're definitely a Civil War reenactor.
Yeah.
And I get for them, like it's different because they have to do that so that the people that are standing and watching from the outskirts can see people die. Like they have to be super dramatic. But like in the movie, it's really funny. And I love that they use that guy twice because he jumps. And then it cuts away, and then like a couple seconds later, it comes back and he jumps again. And you're like, that was the same guy.
Twice.
Yeah. So yeah, but there's some of them. I get
things.
You. Yeah.
It's those couple moments that are in there where you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, this is so hokey. they're just being Civil War actors and just having the grandest old time doing it. And a couple of those moments I'm just like, because frequently that's like comes after a big kind of or during a big moment where you're like, you know, you're getting ready to go and you're just like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, there we go. That's what I was missing in this.
That's funny. Yeah, there was another moment like that I was like, oh God. I think it might have been some dude like was getting bayoneted or something, and he's like doing all this shit, like acting all goofy. I was like, oh God, get out of here. But yeah, there's some funny moments where they overact the shit out of it.
I mean, they didn't quite often, or just some of that you're just like, all right, well, it was made a while ago. They probably could have been a little bit more button up with the choreography, but
yeah,
I mean, what are you gonna tell old Joe Schmo that's like, this is my shot? Like I've been reenacting for 8 years. I'm in the movie now. This is real.
Have either of you ever been to a Civil War reenactment, one of the live ones?
Yeah, I've been to multiple.
Alec, you got to try to find a way. Like, it's wild. I don't know that they do them that much. I'm sure they do. Look, I say that, but I lived in the South. They love their Civil War reenactments. But
it's an excuse to drink and act like you went to war.
Yeah. I also, so when I was in Kentucky, we had one of my professors he did Civil War reenactments, and then he was like a Civil War buff. It was the one that made us watch this movie. And then he picked two of us he had a Union uniform and a full legit Confederate uniform. And so I got picked with a buddy of mine to go. We went to his house and we got to try on the uniform. And then like we dressed up in this uniform, and he actually had old Civil War muskets that he taught us how to load and then fire. So we went out, and this shows the sign of the times, because you'd never be able to do this shit nowadays. But like we went out in this big field out by our high school that was out back of it. And we were in this full wool, by the way. This was legit, and it was hot as fuck. And it was like springtime in Kentucky.
But was it JJ hot, or was it hot?
Dude, like this was like horrid hot. Like seriously,
this is probably why you hate the heat.
It could be like it was full. Like, okay, so you have like your normal, like I had normal underclothes on, right? And then you have this button up shirt that went on, and then there was the blue jacket. And because I moved from Kentucky from Ohio, he made me wear the Union uniform. And then my buddy who was from Tennessee, he put in the Confederate one. So, but I put on this jacket, and it's heavy as hell. It weighs like 7 pounds. Okay. And it's made of pure wool. Like, I'm not kidding. It's not like kind of wool. It's like that nasty, scratchy ass blanket that your grandpa used to keep in the back of the truck that he like, because if you got cold, you put it on and it's super heavy, but it itches like a motherfucker. Again, it didn't matter. Like I had like that shirt on, but it itched right through it. And then the pants were just wool too. And then you had this big ass heavy leather belt. So by the time you're done, it's like packing a 15-pound backpack on your body. Then you have this musket that weighs like 12 pounds. Like it was wild how much shit. And I'm like, this is crazy. And then to think about these guys running in this shit and then being out there in the heat and the humidity, I was like, I would have died. I'd have been the asshole that got caught running away. Like in that first scene, like that'd have been my ass. And I'd have been one of those 3 dickholes that are like, you can court martial my ass, fucker. I ain't doing it. Cause that shit was hot. And so we went out, but he let us like do like in front of the whole class was sitting there. And so then we would line up and we loaded the musket, but without the ball. Obviously, cool thing about muskets, you can load them without the ball and still fire them. And it's like you're firing them. Yeah. And we got to fire it outside the high school. That was the wildest shit. I was like, you could never get away with that today. But yeah, so it was crazy. But that moment, like really got me into like, what else about the Civil War? And then what about history in general, especially our country's history? But yeah, it was nuts. It was a lot of fun. But God, I was glad to take that shit off. It was so hot. It was horrible. So I can't even imagine these guys like in that uniform, running down a hill, climbing up the hill for crying out loud. And then like,
it's not a small hill. It says little round top, but it is not a small hill.
Little my ass. Only because it's littler than big round top. That's the only thing. It's not little.
Jay, let's just call it what it is. You would have been in the artillery.
Oh shit. Even that I don't know if I would have done. Like
you'd have been hot as balls over there too.
Dude, I still had to wear that uniform. I would have died. Because then as you're sweating, it fucking soaks it all up, so it gets even heavier. I'm out. I would have literally died, not because I got shot or anything, but like
JJ would have been smoking and chewing that tobacco to an early death.
Shit, yeah. I sucking. I was watching this whole movie. I was just like, I want a cigar. God damn it. That's all I get. That good Southern tobacco. Tobacco. I've had my good fair share of Southern tobacco. Yeah, I really like this movie, no matter how long it is. And I one of my favorite, like some of my favorite parts, to be honest, which is weird for me, is like the the overdub, like the recording of their thoughts. Like the first one you see is General Lee.
Surprising that that's very uncharacteristic.
There's a reason for it, and that's because the lines that you hear that are audio over, and it's the thoughts of like Chamberlain and General Lee, and I think there was one other one that they had do it, but those are directly out of their journals. Like they're not written for the movie. Those came directly from those men's journals. And like, so the whole Chamberlain where he's talking about everything that they're doing in the war and stuff like that, like all of that came directly from, they didn't change it. They didn't grammatically correct it. Like that was what they wrote in their journal. And that's why they did it that way. So sitting and listening to that, and then being able to have, like, even though we know it's Martin Sheen's face, but to listen to like the words of General Robert E. Lee in the midst of this, understanding that right now they're winning the war. At this point, they're winning the war, not by a large margin, but enough that they're confident. And then, but to still have the reservations and the thoughts and how are we going to do this? And is this the right call? And to have the weight of that entire process on your shoulders. And then, oh my gosh. But I love those moments because I'm like, I'm listening to the words of these people that actually lived in this moment. And that's wild to me. Like, that's why I think when you can read that or listen to that kind of thing, that's so cool to get that kind of insight into this person, that these people that historically are giants, right? And man, just to know that they were thinking probably the same thing that most of us would have been thinking, at least to some extent, where there's fear, there's trepidation, there's doubt, there's overconfidence, there's a lack of confidence, all those things that are going through those guys' minds. It's so cool to me. So I love that part of this movie, that they actually found a way to inject that into the movie. So I think that's my favorite part. Okay, should we rate this thing?
Let's do it.
It's a very short podcast for a very long ass movie, but I like it.
Good.
All right, Alec, kick us off, buddy.
My movie, my go. I'm gonna give it 4.5. It's the little nitpicky things that pull me out of the movie, and they're important. Like, I know that's the way it is and everything like that, but it just at times is so hokey that it ruins almost the real kind of message behind the movie or the importance or the gravitas that was happening. But it's an enjoyable watch. Like, it's something that never feels as long as it actually is. And I mean, it's also one where you don't really want to skip through the monologues or the quieter parts or the less parts, because they're so important. They still have a lot of draw to them, to where, I mean, there's no easy way to cut it down. In some other movies, you'd be like, skip. Here, you can't really do that. But I'll give it a 4.5, and I will sit down and watch this anytime.
I like it. Mattson.
I mean, I agree with Alec that you can't skip the dialogue, but this movie does feel long. I don't know what universe that you live in. It definitely is a long movie. Like, you can't trick yourself with that. I would say the same thing about a movie that I love, being The Dark Knight. It's a long movie, and like I said with that movie, you've got to be invested into this movie. It's not something that you can pop in, pop out. Like, if you want to do it right, you got to sit down. You got to have the snacks. You got to have the time. You got to give it the respect that it deserves. So with that, I'm going to give it a 3.5. Obviously, a massive docking for the amount of time. But if you're into history and you haven't seen this movie and you like American history and the Civil War and things, like, you should definitely see this movie. You should go read Killer Angels. I think you'll enjoy what's on screen. Take some time, maybe split up into 2 chunks, a Saturday, Sunday thing, but you'll be happy that you did.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a 4.5 as well. I'm with kind of in between the two of you. Like, I can feel that it's long when I think about it, but I get lost in this movie. So like, when I watched it, I was sitting there going, fuck, I'm 3 hours in already. I'm like, I've been watching this for a long ass time, but I like what I'm watching. And while I can feel every moment of the 4, especially like the last like half an hour of this as extended edition, I was like, good Lord, this is long. But when I'm watching it, like, I get really wrapped up in what's going on, and the dialogue for me, like I said, the overdub dialogue is really great, and I love it for that very reason. But the conversations too, like the conversations between, like, the one where they're sitting at the top of the rock after the Battle of Little Round Top, and like the Chamberlain brothers are discussing everything together and like what's been going on, or the moment where like I said, Tom Berenger's talking to Stephen Lang, and like you're like, geez, like this is just like, the conversations feel really long, but if you sit down and you listen to them, they're having this meaningful dialogue about, I don't want to do this. This isn't the right choice, but I'm going to do it because my general has told me to do it. And so they weighing all these options out. Anyway, like, I just love the dialogue in this movie, even more so than the battle. If I'm skipping anything, it's the battle scenes, because I don't care so much about most of like those scenes of like the fights. Like, I understand what's happening there. I want to listen to these men talk to each other, to themselves. And that's what really gets me to this, because that understanding of where they're at and like what they're thinking and how they're planning that stuff really intrigues the shit out of me. So I do get lost in it. So I forget that I'm watching 4.5 hours or almost 5 hours of movie. So yeah, I highly recommend go watching this too. I will say if I'm docking it for 4.5, it's a combination of the fact that it is almost 5 hours long and the goofy shit that Alec's talking about that I can't help but giggle at as I'm watching it. And I'm like, I shouldn't be laughing during this movie at this part because people are dying, but I can't help. This guy jumps like 3 feet in the air because of a musket ball. It's just like, I even understand, like, and the other one that bothers me, that's really stupid, that it bothers me as much as it does, is the cannonball shit. Like, that's not how cannonballs back then worked. Like, they had some that were explosive, but most of the time those were on naval ships. And they had artillery, but these were cannons. These weren't like boom, boom stuff. This is like hit somebody and tear you in half shit. You know what I mean? Like, these are cannonballs they'd hit and roll for 3 feet and break people's legs and tear them off. And I get you can't show that in 1993, but at the same time, like, every time a cannonball exploded, I'm like, they didn't explode, god damn it. But whatever.
I feel like they could have. They had movies that showed that. They just decided to. Wasn't this movie PG-13?
Oh, that I don't know. Could be. There were a couple of scenes where they showed like dudes missing legs and stuff. So
yeah,
and like so I don't know. What is it? Oh, it's rated PG. Good Lord.
Well, there you go, Jay. There's your answer.
That's fair. But I don't know why that bothers me so much. But exploding, and that's not just this movie. Anytime they show war movies with exploding cannonballs, it pisses me off. Like, contact with the earth, like Earth flying up in the air, that's fine. But the explosions and the fire coming out, I hate that shit so
explosions.
Much. Explosions. I love explosions. Just not from a cannonball, like not from a 12-pound piece of freaking lead. Like, that's not how that worked. But anyway, I digress.
I actually appreciate that they made this movie PG though, because it just allows kids that do get enthralled with something like this to not have to, like, parents don't have to have the war of like, well, like, you know, they read the book, they should watch this. I don't know. Like, don't get me wrong, I love a good war scene. I love seeing the realism, but like, you know, it's also kind of nice. You want to watch it with like your 8-year-old son, like, go for it.
Yeah. Well, it's realistic enough that you understand that you're watching a war movie, right? But I'm with you. Like, I don't need to see a cannonball roll down and tear some dude's leg off for me to go, And I understand they need it to be dramatic so that you know that a cannonball landed, but it bothers me. It's stupid. It's a me thing. But anyway, that's my 4.5. I will watch this almost any time, but I break it up typically. Like, I will usually watch it in 2 parts. I didn't this time, but there used to be, when it came out on VHS, that's how old this movie was back in the 90s. There were 2 VHS tapes, and I don't remember where the cutoff was. I think it might have been the Battle of Little Round Top. Once that was done, they had that conversation between the Chamberlain brothers, and then it cut, and it's like, please insert tape 2. So that's how old I am, is I watched that shit when you had to break it apart and watch it in 2 movies. So I still do that.
I don't think I've had to do it with the VHS, but definitely did that with a few DVDs for sure. Yeah. Lord of the Rings being the easiest example of that.
Yep. This was the first time I ever watched a movie that I had to swap VHS tapes, and I sure did. It was fun. So there it is. We kick off. What a way to kick off May and the month of war movies, and I like it. I like our picks. I like that we started with this one. It's an interesting movie, and I love it. So we'll see you for the rest of them. But Alec, before we go, tell everybody where they can find us.
Happy to, JJ. Like JJ just said, this is week 1 of our wartime movies. And best part is there was no other kind of parameters other than war movies. So we're going to be going all over the place in history. It's going to be a fantastic month. Shout out to our patrons. It's Charles and Rich, who made the selection for this and then made the selection for war movies, then went ahead and made the selection of which movies to choose from. So that lineup is entirely on them. They picked a great one. Don't come at me in the comments. It wasn't my fault. Speaking of the Patreon, that's the place to get involved in our content. We have a ton of extra episodes out, ton of behind the scenes content. You can get involved in the voting process to select topics and to select movies that go inside the topics. So follow us there at What's Our Verdict Reviews to get all of your What's Our Verdict needs taken care of. With that, I'll kick it back to the Maharaja of MASH, the King of Crash, JJ.
Love it. Thanks, Alec. Yeah, go check out Patreon. It's fun. Yeah, we really are kind of all over the place this month, aren't we? With
pattern.
Yeah, there's no like connective tissue other than war. All sorts of crazy stories too, but they're all kind of heart-wrenching and interesting in their own ways. But yeah, with that, as always, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Cinemagic out.
Whoa!